Okay, we're doing it. This is live in case there was any doubt in your minds. Nothing is pre-recorded. This is day 2 of the Hashnode Writing Bootcamp. I am your no longer muted host, Sam Sycamore. This 2 week event covers the art and business of technical writing. And in today's session, I think what we will learn applies to both ends, the art and the business. For those who don't know me, before I joined up with Hashnode, I had been a freelance writer and editor for about 10 years. But the crazy thing is, in those 10 years of writing, I still don't think I've written as many articles as our speaker today has in the last year and a half. In fact, this guy has published a blog post every day since March of 2020. And this is now September 2021, in case I need to remind you. I'll let you do the math on that one. I am, of course, referring to Hashnode All-Star Chris Bongers. Chris, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And indeed, I did publish every single day. No, that's not completely true. I missed 1 week, I think, when I got married. I decided to not publish for 1 whole week. Other than that, I publish every single day. And I've gotten so many questions. So I'm really glad I got to speak about this topic now in this event. It's super excited to talk about consistency and how to come up with ideas, because that's actually the main issue.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that comes up so frequently for me as well. And so I'm really excited to hear your thoughts. So without further ado, I am going to make my floating head disappear and let Chris take the stage.
Right, cool. I did prepare a presentation for you all, which I'll share with you now. The presentation will also be available afterwards, and I've written a blog post that will be live tomorrow with some more details about this whole topic. So if you having trouble keeping up with me, or whichever it may be, you have to drop out for whatever reason, don't worry, it'll be somewhere. Right. So let's talk about how to come up with article ideas and how to stay consistent while doing so. But first, let me start with a little bit of an introduction of who I am. So my name is Chris. I'm a proud husband. I got married to my beautiful wife, Nicole. As you can see in the picture, we do both love hiking in the mountains. So we decided to get married in the mountains, which was amazing. We also have a cute little rescue dog, Yatri. She's not with us at the moment, but we did bring her on our holiday, so very cool. And I'm happy to announce that I'm currently a senior developer at Dailydotdev. You guys are the first to hear about this, as it has been very recent. So I'm only starting on the 1st of October, but I'm super excited. As you can imagine, it will work well with what I do and what I love. So I'm so excited to be part of Dailydotdev. They're a great team and a great company. And if you don't use them, just go check them out, and it will change your life. And I, as Sam, I think, love the digital nomad life. I just love to travel around and work from different places. So as we speak, I'm in Jeffreys Bay, a little surf town in South Africa. I hosted this meetup in a co-working space. They were nice enough to give me a private office for the day, and make sure you guys have the best quality of a presentation. Whenever I'm not on a computer, I do love hikes and good food. My wife is a chef, so that's always a win. And whenever I'm not doing either of that, I'm pretty much busy blogging. Like I said before, I blog every single day, and it's I know it's an outlet for me, so it's not even like work, really. It feels empty if I don't do it. And today we'll talk about how you get to a point like that. So let's talk about being consistent. So if you look up consistent, it has a couple different meanings in the dictionary, but the one we are looking for resembles best that's the state that it has here. So acting or done in the same way over time, especially to be fair or accurate. So that's obviously very vague, like how one would describe it. But let's see what that actually means, because that doesn't really tell us much. So this is my perception of what consistency means. It's a mixture of time and effort. Those are the two golden pillars for being consistent. You have to put in a certain time period, and we'll get to the details of it, and you have to put in the effort. And if you combine those two pillars, you get something called consistency. Of course, there are these pillars on their own. I mean, you could put in effort in one article, one book, and it could be amazing, right? It could change your life. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it works for a lot of people. Or you could put in the time, but not put in the effort, which would result in you've done a lot of work, but you didn't really get anything in return. So that's pretty much a waste of time. Let's see how we can optimize these two. So I've decided to create these two golden standards. They are not like something that's known. It's my version of approaching how you can become consistent. So I've put it as writing every time period means consistent, and putting in the same effort in every article is consistent. So if you take those two rules and apply that to everything you do, you are consistent. And then don't get me wrong, as you've seen, I write every day, and some people mix that up with being consistent. Well, for me, that's part of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean consistency. And we'll get to that in a bit, because that's what a lot of people, take for granted. I see a very interesting question pop up in the chat. The time period, is that like time of day or the amount of time? And that's a very good question that I actually will address right now, because it's a vague understanding. It's not particularly 1 hour a day, for instance. It's not particularly every day, but it's something that you are comfortable with. So for me, it means every single day. For other writers, it means once every week. And it does depend. The amount of time you put in depends on what you are doing at that moment. But let's say you need an hour to write an article about something. And in that 1 hour, you can provide a level of effort that makes it a good article. Then that's enough. But like the next week, you might be writing something that takes more of an effort, right? So you end up spending 2 hours that week. So that's why it's a little bit of a variable there, and it's put in like brackets to make it like whatever you're comfortable with. So it's really about picking a period that you are comfortable with. Let's say that'll become every week, but the amount of time every week can be dependent. So combine that effort with the time period you set, and you are consistent. But let's go a little bit into the nitty details of it, because that alone won't make you consistent. There's a lot of things that actually will need to make it work, right? So we have some side support for being consistent. Side support being tooling, planning, goals, celebrating, and inspiration. And we'll get into each one of those in a later stage. I just want you to know that it's not just those two things. Like there's a lot that goes on in being consistent, and it takes a lot of effort. So let's see. Right. Before we dive into like becoming consistent and more of the details, let's see the main reasons that you could fail, right? Because this is what happens a lot. People put in the effort and the time, but they still fail, and it has a lot of reasons. So I want to address these so we can say, okay, that happened. I know that can happen, but let's change that and become the proper consistent writer, right? So I've had numerous of these before in different projects that I've done, including a lifestyle blog and some other stuff. One of the reasons can be life just gets in the way, right? So you I don't know, end up moving places, or you get a new job and things change, you don't have time. Another thing might be the schedule's not working out. So let's say I decided up front, I'm going to write every day. It stresses me out. I can't make the time for it. It just doesn't work. So that could be another reason why you fail. And then you kind of like, you don't enjoy it, so you give up. Then there's another one, which is a big one for me, is content doesn't get enough traction, right? So this was very hard for me to get over in the beginning. But if you blog, you put a lot of time and effort into your article, and it just doesn't pick up. Like nobody reads it, nobody visits the blog. It's like, what's going on? You've put in the effort, it's valuable content, and no one finds it. And that's a hard thing to get over, especially in the beginning. But for me, it's about people need to find your article, so it will take some time. I've got articles that had 0 views on the day that I released them, but after now, like a year and a half later, people are finding those articles because they are searching for a certain topic. So that brings me joy later on. So I don't really freak out if an article doesn't pick up right away. And some do, some are just like that gem article that just goes from the start and never stops getting views. So they do exist, but don't let yourself be, pulled down if they don't. It's just an effort of they need to rank over time. Then there's the one about the effort might drop over time, right? So you are blogging and it's fun, you have a lot of ideas, it all goes well. Then over time, you're like, the effort kind of drops. You're like, oh, I have to write another article. Happens to a lot of people. Like, it kind of goes similar with writer's block. You don't know what to write about, and that's a really big issue for people. Like, you kind of need to get over this, and we'll get to that, because there will come a point where you get either one of these. So either you don't feel like it, or you don't know what to write about. So we're going to try and solve these for you guys. But first, let's say, why do we even care about consistency, right? The main reason, no, actually not the main reason. One of the reasons is that readers love fresh content, right? So, you as a reader love to read new insights on things. You love to read the latest trends. You love to read someone's opinion about something. And the other reason combined with that is readers love to know when to expect content. So you as a blogger, but as a reader, should always know when to expect something. And that's where your time period that you've defined, or will be defining in a second, is going to come in. So for me, that's daily. Like, people will be kind of like almost worried if I don't publish an article every day. They'll like, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you doing well? Is something going on? And that happened to me when even though I announced that I would be away for my honeymoon for a week, people still send me emails saying like, are you okay? Is everything all right? Did you stop the blog? So, I mean, it's just something that happens. And I actually do the same thing, for instance, it's actually a content thing. So with podcasts, you kind of know, every Tuesday that podcast will release a new episode, and you're looking forward to it. And if it doesn't happen, you kind of lose interest, and you might unfollow them because you think they stopped. could happen. Another thing why you should care is that over time you'll build some kind of authority in a certain aspect of the world. So let's say you write about whatever it is, Python, JavaScript, Node.js, doesn't really matter. You write soft skills, you build an authority on that. And that has a lot to do with picking a niche, but some other people will talk to you about that. For us, it's consistency helps building that authority. The next one is very interesting, is you build up keywords over time. If you look at my blog, it's very short articles. It's very almost easy to grasp. You kind of get to the point and solve a problem, right? And therefore, it's very hard for me to rank on certain keywords. However, by providing consistency, I rank on a different amount of keywords because I write an article about keyword X, write an article about keyword X, right? So over time, we'll build keywords and link to that. One of the other things that why you should care is that it's a very good habit to build. So, we're not only being consistent, but we're building a habit. And the habit is that we are blogging every day. So that could help you with like writing skills, with presentation skills, with how to explain things. And there's a lot of things that you're actually working on. So one of the reasons that I started blogging was that I wanted to improve my English writing, and especially technical English writing. And you do see a difference in what I did when I started to a year and a half later, what I'm writing now. It's not perfect, I'm not saying that, but it does really improve over time. So with that, I also want to say, like, don't stress if your first article doesn't look really good. There is a lot of people out there, especially on Hashnode, very proud community of helpers and people motivating you, where one can really improve, right? So I have a lot of people giving me advice like, oh, did you check this article out? Maybe you should improve your writing here. It's very cool and a good way to go about it. So very happy with that. And my most important one, which might sound weird to a lot of people, is that consistency can de-stress you. Meaning that once you have a schedule, that actually works wonders. So one might think having a schedule is very stressful, but it's the opposite. Because if you know I'm going to write every week or every month or every Friday, it de-stress you. If you don't have that, you're going to be, oh, I need to put out an article, but I don't know when. I'm stressed out. I don't know what to do, when to do it. And having that set will really help you. And more about that in, I think, yes, this one. So we've talked about what can go wrong, what it means, but how do you become the consistent writer? And that's where we kind of head back to the beginning, setting a realistic time. So a time doesn't mean you work on it every day for an hour. It could be, but I don't think that'll work for most people. What it means is you set something that works for you. So for me, that means I write every day, and I'm pretty sure most people think that's just crazy. It's ludicrous. Don't do it. And I would actually agree with most people, since before I started it sounded crazy in my head, but I bought a stupid domain name, so now I kind of have to. No, not about that, but it's just we go about it. But that kind of brings me to the point, what is a good realistic time frame? And it's very hard to say. I can't decide this for you, but let's just talk a bit about some ideas. You could say, I want to write every Monday, right? So every Monday you publish a new article, and that's fine. But maybe every week sounds a bit too much for you, and there's no harm in this, right? So whatever works for you, don't stress yourself out. It's something we do as a release valve. It shouldn't be a job, right? So don't stress yourself. If you think 1 week is a bit too stressful because you can't bring the articles to a level they need to be, then that's fine. But maybe then we can say we do every first Friday of the month, we have a new article, and that's fine. Maybe you want something in between. So you say every second week on a Wednesday. So whatever it is, we can just set it, but stick to it, right? And this is kind of where a little bit of planning comes into, and we'll get to that in the third point, plan ahead. But having this realistic time before you even start doing it, right? Just think about like, can I actually do it? So look back like half a year, like, would I be able to do it every that time? Like, did I have something else going on? Did I actually have the time for it? Would it be possible? And with that, go ahead. Like once you've decided on a good time frame. I would say I would go for like a maximum of a month. Else it will be a bit too vague for people to grasp that is a time frame. Like if you say I can only do one article every year, that's kind of defeating the purpose of having a time frame, in my opinion. So I would kind of say try to stick it to close to a month as a maximum. If you really can't and you say, I really have to use every 2 months, it's fine. In the end, whatever works for you. But in the points of being consistent, I would say take maximum 1 month. Then we get to the second point. It's about motivate your effort. So with all this time planning going on, you might get to a point where, I really don't feel like it today. And I've get plenty of those, really. Like on a Sunday, you just want to go out, have some food and chill. And then you realize you have to write a blog because, it's another day. And that's where something comes in. And it's one word, it's very important. And it's called discipline. And discipline is a little bit of a bitch, really, but it's what we need. Because with discipline, we can tell ourselves, you have to do this. Like at this time, you don't like it, but you're going to like what you get in return for it. You're going to be the person that put out the consistency. And I read something the other day. It was someone related to going to the gym, right? So if you say, I want to go to the gym 3 times a week, you get to a point where you're just like, I can't, man. My body's sore. I don't want to go to the gym. What you do is with discipline, you say, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to try it out for 10 minutes. And if I really don't like it after these 10 minutes, I'm going to go home. But you'll probably find after those 10 minutes, you're actually finding it very good and enjoying it. And you just want to finish it, right? Because you're already there. You started, now you got to go with it. And that's what I do. If I feel like blogging, I just say, okay, at 9 o'clock, I'm going to write this blog. I'm going to do this task, whatever it is. And if I still don't want to do it after like 10 minutes, I'm going to stop with it. And actually, I never stopped. Once you're at it, you like get motivated, you inspire yourself. And that's kind of why I named this thing Motivate Your Effort. You kind of hack your motivation to, get started. And even then, if for whatever reason, after these 10 minutes, you're just like, man, I really can't. It's fine. You've tried it and it doesn't work that day. I mean, it happens. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't always have to do it, but it's what works for me and it works for a lot of people. And with discipline comes consistency. It's what you need at a certain point. Right. So with this discipline and consistency set, we also create a habit. That's kind of what I do. Since I write every day, I have to get into a habit of writing. So during the week, before I start work, I get up like an hour early. I'm a very early person, and I set aside that hour to write a blog. Generally takes me around an hour, so it normally works out, evens out. And if it's not done, I'll continue with the little task I have left, creating images, whatever, after work. But these habits are really important, like to build around. If you decide I'm going to publish every Monday, you kind of have to realize, like, okay, a time before Monday, I'm going to have to write all this stuff. So pick something that you can relate to. Like maybe it's Thursday evening. Every Thursday evening, you're going to write something, and set that time aside. This kind of goes into planning ahead, right? So there are a lot of things here that are important. Once we set this time frame, right? So I'm just going to take my example. So I write every day. So set that aside in your calendar. I use a Notion page for it, just a little calendar in Notion that has all the days mapped out. And for every day, it just says, okay, write article. Because with this, you can plan ahead, right? So what I do is I take a minimum of 6-7 articles ahead. I plan, and I come up with the titles for these articles. We'll get to the point about like how do you even get to all these things, because it's a lot of effort to come up with ideas. But we'll get to that in another slide. But just for the purpose of this, plan ahead. So plan these titles in your Notion document, in your calendar. You can use like a calendar on the wall and just write like what you're gonna write about. Just the title is fine to begin with, and you kind of go, you work up to the point where you have 6 or 7 articles done. Like you don't have to worry about these. So let's say now that your time frame is 1 article a month. You can kind of work ahead to the point where, like, for the next half year, you don't have to stress about it. And that's what helps de-stressing this whole thing, because you plan ahead. So let's take it away. Block out these slots in the calendar so you know when you're going to publish. Could be every week, could be every month, doesn't really matter what works for you. You plan at least the titles in this calendar, but try to work up to having 6 or 7 articles worked out. It doesn't have to be finished, but like write some an outline of what you're going to do. This will all help you become more consistent. And with that comes setting realistic goals, right? You need goals in your life, and you need goals to become a consistent writer. You need goals to get a job, to finish school, whatever it may be. You need goals. Everyone needs them. And why? Because goals help you overcome obstacles. And obstacles is what life is all about. We get obstacles and we overcome them and we improve. We get better. Overcoming obstacles is a great motivator, right? Because it's always a win. You've done something that you couldn't do and you overcome it. So like it motivates us to go on and to become better, right? It gives us reason to celebrate. But goals, and I'm going to say this out loud, they only work if you write them down. So this might be an interesting approach for your next article. You're going to write down your goals. Like, what are you going to work on? Like, what do you want to achieve with your blog? Or what do you want to achieve as a writer? Where do you want to end up? Like that, you could set a lot of goals, and sharing them will actually be a very good example of people being able to hold you accountable for it, you holding yourself accountable for these goals, and it gives us a lot of option to celebrate these wins, because as a blogger, it's very important to celebrate every win. Doesn't matter how small it is, we have to celebrate it. Why? Because we put in a lot of effort, right? So you've written your blog, and at that point, it didn't really bring you anything. Maybe you learned a new thing, but other than that, it didn't really bring anything. So if 20 people read your article, that's a massive win. You've 20 people learned something because you wrote it down on paper. If you get a new newsletter subscriber, that's amazing. Someone's interested in what you write down. Like, wow, really? And it just keeps growing. So that's why we keep celebrating. If someone reposted your article, retweeted it, or shared it, like, whoa, what's going on, man? People really enjoy it and think other people should read it. It's amazing. And so it doesn't matter how small the win might seem to you, like, it's a win. Like, we have to celebrate these things. So how do we celebrate it? Like, I don't know, there's 1,000,001 reasons or ways to go about it. Feel free to like tweet about it, talk about it, like put it on a Discord, like, oh, look what happened. And people want to celebrate with you, because who doesn't like to celebrate, right? Another way would be to buy yourself a cupcake or whatever you like, pizza. Have a pizza for dinner because you've had an amazing win. And there's so many reasons to do it, and you deserve it. You put in the effort, you put in the consistency, so good for you. Right. Another thing that you need to become a consistent writer is you have to inspire yourself. Because if you want to inspire others, you have to inspire yourself. All right. You can't be the inspiration to someone if you don't appreciate what you have as a knowledge point, especially as developers, right? So we write amazing code. Like, someone wrote Hashnode as a system. Like, that's amazing. That's wonderful. Why not write about it? But it doesn't matter what you did. Like, you learned something that, wow, really good job. But write it down. Like, you are an inspiration. And it doesn't matter if you learned how to make a button in HTML or you've written Hashnode. Like, it's amazing that you can do that. And there will be someone interested in learning what you've just learned. So, like I said, it doesn't matter at what stage you are. If it is learning HTML, feel free to share it. If it is learning React, share it. If it is how to create an amazing system, share it. But you can only do that if you appreciate that you have learned these things. Like, you're an inspiration to yourself. Right. One way to go about finding these inspirations, because sometimes it's hard, right? We don't go out and say, wow, I learned how to create an HTML button. Like, what's this guy even talking about? That's not a real celebrating, inspiring thing. But what I do, and feel free to try it out, is distance yourself from any distractions, right? Go sit in a room where nobody is and there's no distractions. Like, put on some relaxing music, or just close your eyes for a second and just think about where you are in life and what you've learned in the past, I don't know, 6 months, month, year, whatever it is. Just think about it and think, especially like, okay, I couldn't do these things 6 months ago, so that's amazing, and that will help you inspire yourself and actually help you come up with ideas what to write about. But we'll get to that point. It's an amazing way to appreciate yourself, because I don't think we do that nearly enough as people and human beings. Like, we are a pretty amazing species where we get to learn very quickly, adapt very rapidly, and grow like massively. I think if you told people 10 years ago the things that we have now and what we accomplish, they would kind of laugh at you and say like, yeah, that's impossible. Nobody's gonna, live on Mars or whatever it is, or sell NFTs of pictures you just took of someone. So with that comes inspiration. And the last thing is tooling. Like, you can't do any of this without proper tooling, and it can be a lot of things, right? So don't just think about Notion, right? Notion, great tool, I love it. But think about writer groups, right? So there are specific writer groups that can hold you accountable, give you ideas. You could talk about what you're struggling with and how to go about it. There are blogging communities out there. You can Google them. I linked some in my blog post for tomorrow that you can go visit. It's just ways to, help you become better. There are Discord channels. Hashnode has a great Discord. People are always happy to help you. So you're not alone, right? That's the main point. There are AI systems that you could use. Like, if you really struggle to come up with an outline, use an AI for it, for an inspirational idea. Use a mind map tool. Use events to go to, like physical events or online events, to write about it. Use social media, but like as discussions, right? So, for instance, there is some discussion going on Twitter, like mingle in it, and that's another way to come up with ideas. So that brings me to the last point of this whole thing. We've learned how we can become a consistent writer, but how do we come up with content ideas? Because that must be the hardest thing for anyone, like coming up with ideas to write about. And once you get this kind of sorted and use any of these techniques or a combination, you will never run out of content ideas. I can promise you that there will always be something that you can write about. So let's just go through these, right? Where you can write about your struggles, right? So we are developers. We struggle all the time. There's something we can't solve. Stack Overflow doesn't have the answer. Twitter doesn't know what to do. Okay, now what? We go ahead. We find some weird answer on a random forum. Works. Cool. We solved something. But it wasn't on Stack Overflow. Twitter didn't know. So let's write about it, all right? We solved something. It's amazing. But you can also write about your knowledge, right? So let's say you just took a course on Udemy, or you finished the course in school, you build a cool product. That gives you a lot of knowledge on a certain topic. So why not write about it, right? So that helps a lot to me. And with that, if you write about knowledge, it's always a good idea to split things up, right? So make it easy to grasp, create parts of articles, so you can use Hashnode series for that, because it will give people more of a guideline to follow to also gain this knowledge. But you can also write about experiences. It could be how I filled 20 tech interviews. It could be how I landed my dream job. It could be my latest PR accomplishment, right? Because there's a lot of things, experiences we take for granted as developers. Like, what even is a stand-up? So why not write about that? How do you do a good PR? Like, there's so many things. How to use tech Twitter. Why you should use Hashnode. And these can all be experiences that we can share, because experiences are a very personal and opinionated thing. So I think it's always good to share this. And this one I use quite a lot. It's what's the last thing you Googled? Because if you Googled it, you clearly didn't know the answer from the top of your mind. So regex for the win. Datetimes in JavaScript for the win. Anyway, write about that. Like, you clearly needed to Google it for a reason, and that means other people Googled it for a reason. Writing about it not only gives other people like a good point of view, like your point of view on it, but when you write about it, you encapsulate it better in your memory. Doesn't mean you know regex for shit, but that will just always be the same. Then you could always write about what keeps you up at night. It kind of comes down to writing about your struggles, but if something keeps you up at night, so it might be something technical that you can't solve, or you don't know what career path to take. You don't need to have the answer to these things, but you can write about it, and other people can help you get to an answer. So often we think like we have to write about something we know 100% that is the truth, and it should help people to a point, but it doesn't have to be. You could write about something that you want to know. Then we can also write about what tools we use. So you see that I've used tooling quite a lot, and I do like to share about it because let's say I didn't write or talk about Notion, like no one might know. And you might be the person now that goes try it out and actually thinks like, oh, wow, that works for me. Like, it doesn't have to, but it might, and then it's inspired you to use it. So I've actually found quite a lot of my tools through other people's blogs. So think about like Visual Studio Code extensions, browser extensions, but also like hardware, like what microphone to use or whatever. Or what Udemy courses to follow. So those are always very valid points. Why? Because you experience them and you use them. So you have a very good understanding of why they need it. Like, don't have the company tell them why they need it, but rather another, relatable person. Like, give you honest opinions. If you think that certain thing sucks or whatever, it's not good, also write that down. Like, I personally think that there should be no kind of filter on those things. Because if it's just a stupid product doesn't work, then that's it. If everyone else is hyping it, it could be, but if it doesn't work, just write down why it doesn't work or why you think it should be different. And then, of course, you could write about events you attended. It's a bit hard with offline events these days, since they kind of went out of existence. But you could write about this Hashnode Technical Bootcamp, and I've seen people do that. I really love that. I've seen people writing about Didi's previous topic. It's just very cool because that means she inspired people to write about that. So brings me to the point that it works. You could also write about the books that you've read. That's a very valid point. For me, it's always pretty difficult as a person to summarize a whole book in a blog article, but some people are really good at that, and you could leverage that as like, okay, here's my summary of this book. This is why you read it, or this is what you can learn from it, or why you should read it. Another one you see quite often is you could write advice for yourself, but yourself from 5 years ago, right? So what should you tell yourself? Like, okay, how to use Git, because you messed it up in the past 5 years quite a lot, or how to do PRs, or how to manage people, how to manage time. Like, there's so much things you can write about. It's like a never-ending thing of ideas. And then we have inspirational thoughts. So this is quite a vague one. It's kind of for a specific type of person that can really relate to inspirational thoughts, and write about that. So those are things that come to you, and you have an idea of how something works. So I don't know. Recently, I wrote something about a developer mill of us all being like hamsters in a hamster wheel. And you just write about that. You write your vision on something, and often those are very inspirational and up for conversation kind of content ideas. So I really enjoy doing those. It might work for you, but I do know they don't work for everyone. So just putting that out there. And if you use a combination of this list you see here, you will actually never run out of content ideas. If you do, you either don't Google enough or you don't struggle enough, which is pretty rare as a developer, I think. So you should definitely be able to have enough to write about for the coming years to go. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your time. And let's see if we have any questions that we can answer. I'm not sure if Sam wants to jump in between, but we'll see.
All right, excellent. I believe I am unmuted. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. Fooled me once. Chris, thank you so much. That was really helpful. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience has as well. I'm going to pop over to the Q&A tab, and we've got about 10 minutes here with Chris before he's got to go. And so, let's check out a couple of these questions. Okay, this is an interesting one. I'll pull this up here. Comes in from Simona, who asks, how much time do you spend on research versus writing on average to manage publishing every day?
That's a very good question. I'm quite information sponge, I guess. So I read a lot of articles, either on Dailydotdev or on Hashnode or Twitter. I read a lot of articles on a day. So it's very hard to tell how much time I spend on that, but I'm pretty sure it's at least an hour of a day on research, and the writing part is probably generally 45 minutes a day. So that's kind of the average on writing, and then there's 15 minutes of admin, creating images and scheduling tweets and scheduling posts and that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, that's really helpful. Let's get another one here. This one comes in from our good friend Avnish, who asks, I usually write 2 to 3 articles per week, which that in and of itself is pretty impressive. Suppose I try to increase it to 3 to 4 articles a week. Then is it okay if the reading time decreases?
Good question. And first of all, indeed, wow, congrats on publishing 2-3 articles a week. That's indeed massive already. I try to increase it to 3 to 4. I mean, reading time is quite relative to me, because I'm a big believer of, I'm not a fan of the old school way of going, an article has to be 1,500 words or a certain length. That doesn't work for me, as I think if an article solves a problem, it's a good article. It doesn't matter if you can explain something in 5 sentences and it solves a problem, it's a good article. If you write 1,500 words just to hit a quorum and it doesn't solve a thing, it's a kind of bad article. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think it's necessarily bad if it decreases the reading time, as long as you are putting in that effort, the same effort, and you have the time, then sure, give it a try, and you can always go back if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. Just highlighting that idea that the length is less important than getting your message across clearly, saying everything you need to say and nothing more. Cool. Let's get another one up here. This was an interesting one. This comes in from Elisa. Asks, when you don't have any followers, do you think it can be okay not to have a fixed day for publishing?
I think it's a good point to always have a well, not necessarily a fixed day, right? So I mean, even if you say I publish every week, it could be a different day of the week. So I think, in all honesty, that doesn't really matter. I think eventually you'll find it works better for yourself to have that. But for some people that doesn't work, but you just still say I publish every week. I think it's very important that people know when to expect something from you, and seeing. I don't think it matters if you don't have a follower yet, because it'll come naturally, right? You'll get your followers, and those people will want to know when to expect something from you.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Let's okay. This is a great one. This is a question that comes up often. I would love to hear your take on it, Chris. Uh, this comes in from Anish. Says, what do we do when we're about to write an article, let's say on Hashnode, and we find out that someone else has already written an article on that topic?
Lovely. This is my favorite question. That you still publish it. You don't care. Why? Because you have your own way of telling things, right? So I've written articles. I know 100% for sure people have written, and still people like my article more, because it's your way of saying things, your way of explaining things that works for some people and doesn't work for others, and it's fine. You don't need to, it doesn't need to work for everyone, but it works for some people, and those are the people you are writing for, like your audience. So I don't know. People told me they like my articles because it has always has a code pen and a visual representation of what's going on. So definitely write that article, even if it's been written before.
Excellent advice. I could not agree more about that. Let's see. Ooh, this is a great question. I really like this one. It's another one from our friend Simona, who asks, I assume you also read quite a lot of articles. From your experience, what is one of the most common weaknesses or pet peeves in technical writing that you think people should try to improve?
Ooh, very good one. Also quite a difficult one. I think the weakness is that, if I'm speaking for myself at this point, is a weakness would be if you're not explaining it well enough, right? So I know someone said this the other day. Don't know who. If your article doesn't explain it to a non-technical person, it's not necessarily a good article. Something in the lines of that. So at least that's what I see in a lot of technical articles. There's a lot of like gibberish sometimes that you don't really understand. So really be aware that your article explains it to the most basic level of explaining.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's a thing that I observe pretty frequently also, is like you should never assume that your writer knows, or that your reader rather knows anything about the topic. Like assume they have never encountered any of this. Like don't ever skip a step or assume that they understand what the jargon means, because there's always going to be somebody who doesn't know what that jargon means, and they would love it if you would explain it to them.
Yeah, exactly. I don't do that enough, actually. I sometimes assume people know what all the stuff is, and I should really pay more attention to that, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure we all could. Cool. Let's while we still got you here, let's get like one more. I saw an interesting one. Let me see if I can find it again. We got a lot of questions coming in. Thank you all so much for submitting all of these questions. Let's see. We had that one. Ooh, okay. I like this one. Let's end on this here. This comes in from Khalil, who asks, how do you prepare yourself to write an article? Are you keeping notes before starting an article, or are you writing it directly from your mind?
Ooh, very good question, Khalil. It's a bit of a mix, though. As I said, I use Notion. So what I do is I actually have a backlog of like 150 article ideas that I didn't really plan in. But whenever I read something interesting about that certain topic, I just copy paste a link or a little note, whatever comes to mind in that Notion document for that specific topic. So I do keep a lot of notes beforehand for most of the topics. There are a few kind of topics. Generally, those thoughts and ID kind of things, those are just right from my mind, like from whatever it is. So the non-technical kind of ones, the soft skill ones, I tend to write directly from my mind. Technical ones, I always use like notes.
Interesting. Thanks a lot for sharing that. I think that's really helpful. All right, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the Q&A portion today, and we will let Chris get out of here. I know he's got to get lost in another minute or two, but Chris, thank you so much. It has been awesome having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really love to talk about this topic, and I see there's still quite a lot of questions. So you guys can always go ahead and ask me stuff on Hashnode, on Twitter, or wherever. Happy to answer them for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. And yeah, for anybody, if you didn't get your questions answered during the session, please feel free to come join us on the Discord server. If you need the link to that, I think I put it up in the alerts section up there. Yeah, if you check the alerts tab here in AirMeet, you can get a link to our Discord server. Come find us in the Blogging 4 channel. Feel free to ask questions, get feedback. That's the best place to get updates about the bootcamp as we're going. And speaking of updates, I need to give you all the writing prompt for this time around. If you've been hanging out in the Discord channel, then you already got this prompt yesterday, about 12 hours ago. So a little incentive there to come hang out in Discord. You get the insider scoop. So for a writing prompt this time around, we want you to select a topic for a series and write your first entry. And so a few things to consider as you're thinking about a topic. Think about, first of all, can you write 2 or more articles on this topic? And then second of all, will your series be linear, as in you got to read part 1 and then part 2 and then part 3? Or is it going to be more like a loose collection of articles? If you're not sure which one to go with, I would recommend the latter. Keep it loose to be a little simpler for you. If you're not sure how to create a series on Hashnode, our own Catalin Pitt has a fantastic article you can check out that will walk you through those steps. You can find that on the Hashnode Town Hall blog if you go to townhall.hashnode.com. So I will be hanging out in the Discord channel. Come join us there. I'll be giving as much feedback as I can. And tomorrow we are going to keep things going with a live Q&A session on Twitter Spaces. So at our usual time, 3 p.m. UTC, that is 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern, and 8:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. We will be live on Twitter Spaces. So I hope you can be there. That will be on the Hashnode Twitter account. It will be me, myself, joined by James Quick, along with our speakers, Catherine Peterson and Shaquille Hansford. I'm really looking forward to this. This Q&A will only work if you all show up with lots of questions for us. Otherwise, we won't have much to talk about. Please come join us. Come prepared with some questions. We'll invite you up to speak, or you can send us messages if you prefer not to talk. I believe that is all I've got to ramble about. If I haven't made it clear enough at this point, all of these sessions are being recorded, and we will be releasing them on YouTube at the week after this bootcamp ends. So stay tuned for that, and be sure to subscribe to the Hashnode YouTube channel so you'll get updates about that. And I do believe I cannot ramble any longer. Thank you all so much for being here. We will be on Twitter Spaces tomorrow, and then we will be back here on Air Meet for session 3 on Friday. All right, take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.